Alright, let's get started. It's getting kind of late. Um, I'm gonna talk today about how, you know, I gotta think about this one for a second. There's a lot to unpack. This is kind of off the cuff. I was watching Brody Robertson's video about running Windows 7 in 2023 and trying to use it as like a gaming machine. And I'm already hearing about people that say, oh, once Windows 10 drops support, I'm gonna run that to the end of time. I'm not gonna run Windows 11. And that's fine. That's fine if you want to run an old operating system. I got no problem with that. But I'm gonna tell you a little story about why I started using Linux, and I probably have talked about this before, but I have a really bad sense of time and like when things happen. So I always thought I started around 2012 because I could have sworn that I started using Ubuntu around the time Precise Pangolin came out. Um, but then I looked up when Windows 7 came out, and that was all the way back in fucking 2008. So if you want to feel old, yeah, Windows 7 is 15 years old at this point. Um, so I had a laptop at the time. I had this little. It was a no, it wasn't my Presario. It was a. Oh shit, was it? That may have been my. I had a compact Presario CQ57. Now, in the wild, actually, this woman came up to me and said, she worked at a hairdresser next door. I did some IT work for a pawn shop, and she said, "Hey, can you fix my computer? It runs really slow. I need Windows 10 on it, so I can run my software." And it had like Windows 7 or whatever on it. So I upgraded. I think I swapped her in an SSD. I had a random 256 gig SSD lying around, and I only charged her for the parts for it. I didn't charge her a lot of money. But holy shit, that took hours because she had like, as everybody does, they have like a fuck ton of photos on a really old computer. Now, of course, since the really old photos, they're like really small. They're all like less than a megabyte a piece, you know. But I ended up upgrading it to Windows 10, and it still ran. It ran like dog shit. It was fucking awful. I mean, I've had dual core fucking E3s, like AMD E3, I think, like ancient fucking AMD chips, running Windows 10, and they ran faster than this piece of shit. But she had a compact CQ56, and I thought that was fucking hilarious that the computer that I ran for so long, the CQ57, was just a version off of what she had, and that was a big nostalgia trip. But the CQ57, I believe I had, to get back to the real story, there was a daughter board on it that handled the audio, and it wasn't a problem with the daughter board, but my sound just stopped working for whatever reason. The little Windows sound icon would say no sound devices. Now, at this point in time, because this was back in fucking 2007 or whatever, it was really hard to get a USB sound card. Like, you can go on Amazon right now, and if your audio breaks on your computer, like, let's say your desktop sound stops working, you can go online and get an adapter for $8 and it'll plug into USB, or you can get a PCIe one if you have a desktop. But that wasn't really a thing back then. So we tried replacing the daughter board. We tried everything except replacing the motherboard, and that's what it was getting down to, and that just wasn't fucking worth it. Because during the Vista era, you had the. It wasn't like the XP era where you had really expensive laptops, and like laptops were still kind of, for business rather than like for personal use. But you were able to get them for really cheap if you bought them from used from a business. But when Vista came out, that's when you started having laptops that were actually like affordable, like consumer laptops. And they were the cheapest fucking pieces of shit you could imagine. And honestly, a lot of them still are. I traded in my Dell Latitude and paid some money and got a Dell 7506, which I found out today I needed to swap out the SSD because I cannibalized one of my gaming laptop and gave it to a friend, and I took a 500 gig Kingston NVMe SSD and put it in there because it had a fucking Intel Optane drive, and even Windows doesn't come with the drivers for that by default. So, Optane's dead technology. It was really cool, but it never really got off the ground. So I was like, fuck it, I'll just swap it for an NVMe SSD and it'll be fine. Because it was reading as 32 gigs, which was fucking bullshit. It was obviously a 1 terabyte drive. And I couldn't get Windows to install on it without special drivers, and I couldn't get Linux to install on it because it was 32 gigs. So I was like, fuck it. And I didn't realize that Optane drivers only worked on Windows. But I use Linux, so I was like, okay, I'll put in a Kingston drive and it'll be fine. But now I realize I'm bringing my laptop with me on a trip, and I'm gonna need to download some games or movies or something to keep me occupied. So I just ordered a 2 terabyte PCIe Gen 3 times 4. That's what it said on the spec sheet at least. So I'm gonna stick with their fucking specs, not spend 300 on a 4 terabyte SSD. Since it says it's not supported, it says it goes up to 2 terabytes. So that's fine. I got a 4 terabyte 2.5 inch like WD Blue. I can always convert to an external if I needed to. If I need that fucking space, I don't think I will. But anyways, back to the fucking story, which I've gotten sidetracked. In case you want to hear about my fucking life. Well, what happened was my dad said, okay, well, your audio doesn't work, we'll try flashing a new BIOS, we'll try replacing the daughter board, we'll try all the shit, and nothing fucking worked. So he said, well, you got another option, we can try Linux. Because nobody fucking knew back then. This was when these cheap laptops were coming out with Vista. They ran like fucking ass. Era was it required like a supercomputer back then to run. And so he burnt me a disk and he wrote Ubuntu on it. And he said, here, I'm gonna install this for you and you can dick around with that. And I wasn't doing any like PC gaming or anything. I think I had a GameCube at the time. That's how old this shit was. I mean, I was a kid, I was a child. And my dad was like, here, you're gonna run fucking Ubuntu. And the biggest fucking miracle was that the Wi-Fi drivers worked for that computer. Because this was back when Wi-Fi driver, you had to like have the driver, But everything worked except my audio. And at this point for this computer, like this was before YouTube was really big. So there wasn't really much to do on the computer, but fucking word processing and like dicking around, So I had a lot of free time to fuck around with Linux, and eventually, of course, I actually ended up switching to one of those computers I mentioned that you buy from a business. I got a Dell D610 Latitude, and oh boy, that was fucking fun. 30 gig hard drive. We upgraded it to 1 gig of RAM. It had of course, it shipped with the Windows XP, and like it had a Pentium M or a Pentium D in it or something. Oh, it was a beautiful machine. I could play fucking Minecraft on that. It was awesome, and it would like burn a hole in my pillow. So I ended up, since I took my knowledge from that Presario, and I had run Ubuntu, I said, oh, now I know how to use Linux. So I can fucking write a USB. I can boot it up on this little shitty XP computer, and I can do whatever the fuck I want with it. So I actually ran Manjaro for a bit back when Manjaro was good. That's a whole separate fucking subject about how Arch and Manjaro are like the worst things ever. And people will fucking fight me to the death on that. It's only just now that people are realizing that Manjaro's bad. I can't even imagine when they're gonna figure out that Arch is a problem. But it was this experience, and shit. This was around the time when they were moving from GNOME 2 to Unity. Because I remember that was such a cool concept back then. I was like, whoa, you can just get an update and it comes with a whole new desktop environment. What the fuck? That's fucking cool. Because on Windows, you had to wait for the next version of Windows, and we didn't get that until much later. I think the only reason I got Windows 7 was because I think I had to upgrade to it, and you were able to like get repacks or whatever. Because of course I wasn't gonna fucking buy an operating system. I'm a child. But what happened was, this is all. This whole story is to kind of iterate a point that there's like these diehard. I mean, there was obviously like diehard Windows XP users, and you didn't see that so much with Vista, or 8 or 8.1. I think I met one really old dude who said he had Windows 8 and he needed his computer to be just like Windows 8 because otherwise he didn't know what the fuck to do with anything. But Windows XP and Windows 7 really had like this hardcore user base that would just never upgrade. And I mean, why the fuck would you want to? Like, after Windows 7, fucking 8 and 8.1 came out, and 10 was only marginally better than what you already had. That was a whole separate discussion about how 10 was way better than what you had. Or was only, hell, if it was like better. I still say that their search function, like just searching for shit, was a lot better in 10 than it was in 7. I stopped using the start menu entirely. I would just search for my fucking program like I'm using D menu. And that's kind of the thing, is like, you have this hardcore user base, and I'm like, man, this operating system is 15 years old at this point. How long do you expect it to be supported, you know? Like, 15 years ago, quad core CPUs weren't mainstream. Like, you may very well have had a single core computer back then, back in 2008. Or more likely a dual core, you know? And like a really weak dual core too, like a piece of shit, you know, not like an i5, you had like, you know, a Core 2 Duo, which is still a good CPU, you know. If you like pointed a gun at me and said you need to run a Core 2 Duo for the next year, I'd say fine, you know. I don't know what the fuck I'm gonna do with my computer for a whole year, but I'll use it. But that's kind of the thing, you know, is when I realize how ancient the software is, like, then the point I'm trying to get at is there's like this cope, you know. I know it's kind of weird to say cope, you know. Um, I'm not like immersed in that kind of fucking culture or whatever, but I mean, I guess I am, you know. I don't know, but there's like this. What the fuck do you call it? What would you call it? People that refuse to fucking like, they will defend Windows 7 to the end of days, but they refuse to install Linux. They refuse to use something that's free to literally upgrade their experience and get security patches and everything. They refuse to relearn what they know just to use this outdated operating system that's 15 years old. That reminds me too. I wanted to talk a bit about Vista because fucking Linus Tech Tips. You know, this deserves a whole separate video, but I'm just gonna shove it in here now that I'm gone off on 15 different tangents. But Windows Vista was fucking dog shit, and I think I've already made a video on this. I'm pretty sure I have. But Linus Tech Tips, those fuckers, those disingenuous little hacks. They made a video, right? And they said Windows Vista wasn't that bad. Look, here's Service Pack 2 where everything got fixed. And I think it was honestly Service Pack 1 where they fixed everything. But guess when that came out? After Windows 7 came out. So, like, you had an entire fucking product life cycle of garbage. And then when the next one came out, they're like, oh, by the way, for anybody who's still using this piece of shit, here's a fix for you. And they were running it on like high-end hardware, you know. It's like nobody had that back then. Nobody had a fucking gaming computer in 2008. I'm gonna say 2008 because that's when they released that fucking Service Pack. You know, your computer was a piece of junk back then. That's fucking how it worked. And I don't know, you know. It's like, I really wish that these people would like get a fucking clue and be like, maybe I need to upgrade my operating system since it's gonna be like rolling on 20 years and these people are still good. And I wanted to mention this too, was you ever notice how like you go into like a government building like a school or a, hell, actually we'll talk about this instead. If you grew up the same time I did, our first computers in school had Windows 95, and you had like one computer in the classroom, and I don't know what the fuck you did with it back then. We hardly ever used a computer in school until I think later on in elementary school we got like a computer lab, and everything ran either 95 or 98, and I had like some fun games on it, like Thinking Things 3, you know. And then they upgraded from either 95 or 98 to XP. They skipped 2000. They skipped ME. They went straight to XP, and then after XP they skipped Vista, and then upgraded to Windows 7, and then after 7 they skipped 8, and then they skipped 8.1, and by that time I graduated. So I did, and then by the time I got into college, they already had Windows 10 on everything. So I noticed that a lot of these versions of Windows that people really didn't like, a lot of the reason they probably didn't like them was because nobody fucking had them installed. Like, even businesses didn't have them installed. I'd go up to a fucking kiosk, and it's like, maybe I've seen very rarely during Windows 8 and 8.1's life cycle did I ever see a computer outside of the consumer market run that operating system. And people would always tell me, they'd be like, why the fuck don't you like 8? It's fine. And I'm like, well, nobody has it. Nobody's buying a computer right now, so like, I haven't been exposed to it. I've never used it, and I actually went through Windows 8 and 8.1's entire life cycle, and I think I touched a computer running those operating systems like once or twice. I can fucking count them on my fingers. Never used them in school, never found them outside of like a Best Buy or something. And I always thought that was really funny, that like these operating systems that people didn't like were also ones that they probably never used, and they didn't know anybody that had them. So it was always really funny to me. But anyways, the point I'm trying to make is, I wish that these people would, like, there's only so long you can go running Windows 7, because eventually something in your computer is going to die, especially with how cheap those computers were made. Your power supply is going to blow, or you're going to, and I mean, you can swap a power supply sometimes. Here's the thing though, is if you had a pre-built and it had a proprietary power supply, you're kind of fucked. Because a lot of them had proprietary connectors. They're like, let's say your your motherboard goes, something in it goes. Like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna go buy another old motherboard? You're gonna go buy another computer with a Windows 7 on it? No. Like, that was what this one guy, this old dude, was trying to tell me. He's like, can you go get me a computer with Windows 8 installed? And I'm like, no, they don't sell those anymore. They haven't sold those for like 5 years. They haven't sold those since Windows 10 came out. You're not gonna fucking find one of those in the wild. Now, I'm sure you can go buy a used one on eBay, but those prices are probably going up now for people that like need a computer with Windows 8 on it. You can probably get a fair amount for one nowadays, because a lot of them, probably broke. Because that shit's getting old too. I graduated like 8 years ago now, and yeah, and that was around the time 8.1 came out. Probably like right before 10, actually. Windows 10 may have come out by the time I graduated, and we were still running Windows 7. So, yeah, I mean, like, I wonder what these people are gonna do when they'll be getting old and they'll still be running Windows 7, and their kids will be like, Dad, why the fuck are you using Windows 10 or Windows 7? And I was like, well, Junior, I got fucking baby duck syndrome, and I don't know what the fuck to do with my life anymore. So I'm running this piece of shit old computer with the dual core processor. I know I don't have the new SSDs, children, because it doesn't fucking support it. It doesn't. It'll be like fucking 15 iterations of like SSDs down the line, and they'll be like, I can't run any of them. Unless somebody makes a patch for Windows 7. That's what people have been doing now, and I kind of wish that, like, people didn't go through all these hacky workarounds to keep using proprietary software, because, like, this is what happens when you run proprietary software. You run free software and you get updates for life, you know? You know what I mean? Like, they're not gonna support Ubuntu like 12.04 LTS forever, but you can always install the new one, and it won't even break user space probably. All your shit will work exactly the same. And these people want to run an old operating system, but they have this cope so that they don't have to take the free software pill. You know, they want to keep using their shitty, outdated version of proprietary software. It's like there's this whole world out here of wonderful software, and all you don't even have to pay a dime for it. That's what's so fucking great about it. And they will do everything in their power to make sure that your shit can work indefinitely. And that's what's so fucking cool about it is these people would have so much of a better time if they just ran Linux, and they would be so much happier with their lives. They'd be like, oh my god, these people actually support shit made in the 1970s. They support all this technology that, you know, I want to use. And but the thing is, you gotta fucking learn it first. You gotta make the switch, you know. And I kind of wish people would do that, you know? It would be so cool instead of having people complain about proprietary software. Because remember when I say, you know, that with proprietary software you always get screwed? This is the shit you get screwed by. Like, if they don't want to support it anymore, you're fucked. And they're not going to support your user space in the next version. You gotta comply with their shit. But we don't have this problem in free software. In free software, if you want to keep using shit made in the 1970s, they will fucking let you. And they will do everything in their power to make sure you can. And that's what's great about it. But that's really all I wanted to say about that. I know you had to hear my whole fucking life story about about using Windows, but I think I made a point, you know. If you're considering, you know, if you're using an old version of Windows, we got it better over here in every single way. We get the latest updates and we support the old shit. We support your user space. You'll have a blast. I run XFCE. XFCE is fucking ancient, you know? It works exactly the same as it used to. Ain't gotta deal with nothing. I even got a fucking start menu if that's your thing, you know? That's great. But that is really all I wanted to say on it. Thanks.